Chosen one, your soulmate's secret property just became yours. The address will shock you. See the photo. God says, "My child, listen carefully. Before this day began, I already knew you would hear these words. I knew your heart would wonder why this message felt so personal. I know there have been nights when you stared through a quiet window, asking me questions that no one else could answer. You wondered if your soulmate had forgotten you. You wondered if every prayer had disappeared into silence. But I tell you now, my beloved child, nothing you placed into my hands has ever been lost. There is something hidden that has finally reached its appointed moment. It is connected to your soulmate. It is connected to a property that remained unseen for years. It is connected to an address you never expected to hear. Before I reveal why this matters, let your heart become still. If these words are already speaking to your spirit, quietly write "Amen" in the comments as a simple act of faith. Do not rush ahead. Every piece will come together exactly when your heart is ready. My child, listen closely. You believed the separation only created distance, but I was creating preparation. While you were praying through tears, your soulmate was carrying a burden they never found the courage to explain. Hidden inside an old wooden box was a small envelope wrapped inside another envelope. It held papers connected to a property that almost everyone had forgotten. It was never about great wealth. It was never about human success. It became important because it carried memories, promises, and unfinished prayers. Your soulmate looked at those papers many times. Their hands trembled. Every time they whispered your name. They wanted to tell you. Fear always stopped them. They believed you would misunderstand why they kept everything hidden. They thought silence would protect your heart. Instead, silence became another wall between both of you. My beloved child. I watched every quiet moment. I watched your soulmate sit alone beneath a small lamp while rain tapped softly against the window. Beside them rested an open Bible. One page stayed folded for months because they could never finish reading it without tears filling their eyes. They kept asking me whether they deserved another chance. They believed too many mistakes had already been made. Yet I continued working where neither of you could see. Sometimes my greatest answers begin in places people overlook. Sometimes an old address becomes the doorway to a new beginning. That is why this moment feels impossible to explain with human thinking alone. Listen carefully. The property itself is not the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle is what happened around it. A legal review began without your soulmate asking for it. Forgotten records were carefully examined. Old signatures were compared. Hidden details finally came into the light. What looked settled was not truly settled. What looked finished was waiting for truth. Every page seemed to point toward one unexpected name. That discovery left your soulmate completely speechless. They looked at the documents again and again because they could not believe what stood before their eyes. My child, your soulmate remembered a conversation from years earlier. An older family member had once quietly said, "Never throw away that address. One day God will show you why it matters." At the time those words seemed unimportant. Life became busy. Pain covered hope. The address disappeared inside forgotten papers. Yet I never forgot. I never lose what my children cannot find. I preserved every detail until the perfect time arrived. Even the faded handwriting remained untouched, waiting for the hour when truth would finally speak louder than fear. There is another truth you have not considered. Your soulmate never wanted you to love them because of anything they owned. That fear became one of the deepest reasons they remained silent. They wanted your connection to be pure. They wanted your relationship to grow through trust instead of possessions. But silence often creates confusion where honesty could have brought peace. So I began gently changing their heart. I replaced fear with courage, one prayer at a time. I reminded them that real love is strengthened by truth, never weakened by it. My beloved child, one quiet morning sunlight entered the room where those papers rested. Your soulmate picked up an old photograph that had slipped behind the envelope years before. Dust covered the edges. The picture showed a peaceful house surrounded by tall trees. A narrow path led toward the front porch. Looking at that image awakened something inside them. It was not luxury they saw. It was belonging. It was home. It was the place where generations had prayed, laughed, forgiven, and believed me through difficult seasons. Suddenly they understood why letting go of that place never felt possible. Listen closely. You may think this message is only about land or walls. It is not. Every home carries memories. Every doorway remembers footsteps. Every window has witnessed prayers. This property became special because faith had been planted there long before either of you understood its value. Your soulmate slowly realized that the greatest inheritance connected to that address was not money. It was restoration. It reminded them that broken things can become whole again when placed into my hands. My child, somewhere deep inside your own heart you have been asking whether your future still has a place prepared for you. I answer gently. Yes. But trust my timing instead of your imagination. Do not build your peace upon rumors. Build it upon my presence. Pray instead of worrying. I am already working where you cannot yet see. The answers unfolding around this property are not accidents. They are quiet reminders that I still write beautiful endings through ordinary moments. As your soulmate continued reading those documents, another page appeared underneath the official records. It was not a legal paper. It was a handwritten note. The ink had faded with time, but one sentence remained clear enough to read. It spoke about protecting the home until the right season arrived. Your soulmate froze. Their breathing became slow. They whispered your name again because something inside them believed that season had finally come. They could not explain why your face immediately filled their thoughts. Even they were surprised by the peace replacing years of fear. My beloved child, some of you listening have noticed the number 777 appearing in unexpected places. Do not treat numbers as guarantees or secret codes. Instead, let this simple reminder encourage your heart to remember my faithfulness. I often use ordinary moments to gently draw your attention back toward hope. The true miracle has never been a number. The miracle is my presence walking beside you while answers slowly unfold. Listen carefully. Your soulmate is changing. The person who once hid behind silence is beginning to value honesty more than comfort. They no longer want fear to decide their future. They are learning that healing begins with truth spoken in love. That transformation matters more than any document. It matters more than any address. Because restored hearts can finally recognize blessings they once ignored. My child, I also see your growth. You are not the same person who first prayed through heartbreak. Pain taught you compassion. Waiting taught you patience. Quiet seasons taught you to hear my voice more clearly than the noise surrounding you. Those lessons prepared your heart for what comes next. If I had revealed everything earlier, neither of you would have understood its meaning. Now both hearts are becoming ready. There is still one detail hidden inside those papers that your soulmate has not fully understood. It is the very detail connected to the address itself. When they finally discover what that location truly represents, they will realize the property was never separated from your path as much as they believed. Even the old photograph holds a clue that has not yet been noticed. And when those pieces finally come together, both of you will understand why I allowed every delay, every unanswered question, and every silent prayer. My child, hold on to hope until you hear what happens next. My child, listen closely. The morning after those papers were found, your soulmate could not ignore the feeling that something important had been waiting for years. They placed the old photograph beside the documents and looked at it again. This time they noticed a small detail they had missed before. A weathered sign stood near the edge of the property. Most of the letters had faded, but enough remained to point toward a quiet country road they had not visited since childhood. The drive there felt different than they expected. Every mile brought back forgotten memories. The trees seemed taller. The fields looked smaller than they remembered. The silence carried both peace and questions. They wondered why they had stayed away for so long. They also wondered why thoughts of you continued to return with every passing moment. When they finally reached the address, they sat inside the car without moving. The house was older now. Paint had faded. The porch leaned slightly. Yet something about the place still felt warm. It did not feel abandoned. It felt like a promise waiting to be remembered. They stepped out slowly. The wind moved gently through the trees. Birds sang somewhere beyond the fence. Every sound reminded them that time changes many things, but it cannot erase every blessing. They held the photograph in one hand and compared it with the house before them. It was the same place. Near the front steps they found a small wooden bench. Age had covered it with cracks, but it remained standing. They sat there quietly. For the first time in many months they stopped running from their own thoughts. They admitted that fear had kept them from telling you the truth. Not because they wanted to deceive you, but because they worried they would lose you. A neighbor walking nearby recognized them almost immediately. With a gentle smile the older man greeted them and asked if they had finally returned home. Those simple words settled deeply in their heart. Home. They had not heard anyone describe that place with such kindness for many years. The neighbor explained that people in the community had always hoped someone would restore the property instead of letting it disappear. He remembered the family who once filled the house with laughter, shared meals, and prayers before difficult seasons scattered everyone in different directions. As the conversation continued, your soulmate learned something unexpected. A small box had been kept safe by a trusted family friend. It was meant to be returned only when the rightful time arrived. Hearing those words filled them with quiet anticipation. The box was carefully opened later that afternoon. Inside rested several photographs, a few handwritten letters, and one folded map. The map showed the property exactly as it had been decades earlier. On the back someone had written a single sentence. "May this home always welcome hearts that choose love over fear." Your soulmate read the words again and again. They felt as though those simple lines described the very lesson they had been learning through every difficult season. One photograph caught their attention more than the others. It showed the front porch filled with smiling faces. The picture was old, yet one empty chair remained visible near the doorway. It almost looked as though someone had been expected but never arrived. That image stayed in their thoughts throughout the evening. As the sun slowly disappeared, they walked through each room of the house. Dust covered the floors. Light entered through worn curtains. The silence was peaceful instead of lonely. They imagined what the home could become with care, patience, and hope. For the first time they stopped thinking about the property as something to hide. Instead, they began seeing it as something connected to healing. It represented second chances more than possessions. They realized they also wanted another second chance with you. That decision did not erase every fear. It simply became stronger than the fear itself. Before leaving, they placed the photograph back into the envelope with greater care than before. They knew the address had answered one question, but another remained. How could they finally tell you everything with honesty? As they looked back one last time, the house stood quietly beneath the evening sky. It no longer felt like a forgotten place. It felt like the beginning of a conversation that should have happened long ago. And although many answers had finally appeared, one discovery inside those handwritten letters still remained unread. Those pages would reveal why your name had been resting in your soulmate's heart during every step of this journey, and why the next decision could change everything. Listen closely. The drive home felt quieter than before. Your soulmate kept the old letters on the passenger seat, but one envelope remained unopened. They sensed it contained the answer they had been searching for, yet they were afraid that opening it would also require them to face every truth they had avoided for so long. The evening sky slowly faded into soft shades of blue and gold. Every mile seemed to whisper that some doors only open after the heart is willing to change. When they finally reached home, they placed the envelope on the kitchen table beside the faded photograph. They made a cup of coffee but never took a sip. Their eyes stayed fixed on the envelope. For years they had hidden from difficult conversations. Tonight felt different. Silence no longer felt safe. It felt heavy. With careful hands they broke the old seal. Inside was a handwritten letter from someone they deeply respected. The paper had grown yellow with age, but every word remained clear. It spoke about protecting the family property until the right person was ready to understand its true value. The letter never described the home as an investment. Instead, it called it a place where broken hearts could begin again. Your soulmate paused. Those words reached deeper than they expected. They remembered the first honest conversation they ever had with you. It had happened on an ordinary afternoon. Nothing dramatic. Nothing perfect. Yet they had walked away feeling understood in a way they had never experienced before. That memory returned with surprising clarity. For the first time they realized why thoughts of you kept appearing whenever they looked at the property. The connection had never been about ownership. It had always been about belonging. The next page inside the envelope contained a simple sketch of the property. A small circle had been drawn around an old oak tree standing near the edge of the land. Underneath the drawing someone had written, "Look here when your heart is ready." The following morning your soulmate returned to the address. The air felt cool. Gentle wind moved through the branches above. The house looked peaceful beneath the morning light. Carrying the sketch, they slowly walked toward the large oak tree shown on the map. The ground beneath it appeared undisturbed. Still, something encouraged them to look closer. Near the roots they noticed a small stone unlike the others. It had been carefully placed rather than naturally settled. Kneeling down, they gently lifted it aside. Beneath the stone rested a weathered metal box. Their heartbeat quickened. Inside the box were several photographs, an old house key, and another folded letter. This letter was shorter. It simply read, "A home becomes complete when truth is welcomed inside." Your soulmate closed their eyes. Those few words carried more weight than pages filled with explanations. They finally admitted what fear had stolen from them for years. They had been protecting secrets instead of protecting relationships. They had convinced themselves that waiting for the perfect moment would solve everything. Instead, every delay created greater distance. They no longer wanted that distance. As they looked across the quiet property, they imagined laughter returning to the porch. Fresh paint covering the worn walls. Flowers blooming beside the front steps. New memories replacing old regrets. Then another thought quietly appeared. Every future they imagined included you. That realization no longer frightened them. It gave them peace. Later that afternoon they visited the local records office, hoping to better understand the history connected to the property. The clerk searched through several old files before placing one final folder on the desk. "There is something unusual here," she said. Most of the paperwork had already been completed months earlier without attracting much attention. One missing document had delayed the entire process. Only recently had that final piece been located, allowing everything to move forward. Your soulmate thanked her quietly. Walking outside, they looked back at the building. Sometimes life changes through loud moments. Sometimes it changes because one forgotten page is finally found. As the sun began setting, they unfolded the photograph once more. This time they noticed something they had overlooked every previous time. In the background stood a small mailbox beside the entrance road. Although faded, the house number remained visible. It matched the address written inside the legal papers. Everything connected perfectly. Nothing had been random. Nothing had been accidental. That evening they picked up their phone several times, hoping to send you a message. Each time they stopped before pressing the final button. Not because they wished to hide anymore, but because they wanted their first words to carry complete honesty. No excuses. No half-truths. Only truth. Before going to bed they placed every letter, every photograph, and the old key neatly back inside the box. They whispered a quiet prayer, asking for courage instead of comfort. Outside, rain softly touched the windows. Inside, fear slowly gave way to hope. The property was no longer the greatest mystery. The greatest question now was whether two hearts, changed by time and truth, could finally meet without the weight of hidden secrets between them. And resting beneath the final photograph was one last document your soulmate had not yet unfolded. It contained a single handwritten note that would lead them toward the most important conversation of their life. Listen closely. The rain continued through the night. By morning the air felt fresh, and the world outside seemed quieter than it had in years. Your soulmate woke before sunrise with one clear thought that refused to leave their mind. They could no longer allow fear to speak louder than truth. The unopened document rested on the table beside the old key, the photographs, and the weathered letters. They slowly unfolded the final page. It was not a legal notice. It was a personal letter written many years ago by a beloved family member. The first sentence immediately caught their attention. If you are reading this today, it means you finally chose courage over silence. Those words felt as though they had been written for this exact morning. The letter explained that every home carries more than walls and windows. It carries the choices of the people who live inside it. Some homes become filled with regret because truth was never spoken. Others become filled with peace because forgiveness entered before pride could remain. Your soulmate stopped reading for a moment. They realized they had spent years protecting themselves from disappointment instead of protecting the relationships that truly mattered. They looked once more at the old photograph. This time they smiled instead of crying. The house no longer reminded them of everything they had lost. It reminded them of everything that could still be rebuilt. That simple change inside their heart felt greater than any document they had discovered. Later that morning they returned to the property carrying only the old key. They walked slowly toward the front door. The lock resisted at first, then gently turned. As the door opened, soft sunlight entered the quiet rooms. Dust floated through the air. The silence felt peaceful instead of empty. Every room seemed to be waiting for laughter to return. They walked from one room to another without speaking. The living room still held an old fireplace. A wooden staircase led toward the second floor. The kitchen window overlooked the wide field behind the house. Nothing appeared perfect. Yet everything felt full of possibility. Near one corner of the living room stood a small bookshelf that had almost collapsed with age. Behind it they discovered a narrow wooden frame hanging slightly crooked on the wall. Curious, they carefully moved the shelf aside. Hidden behind the frame was another photograph. It showed the house many years earlier during a family gathering. Children were running across the yard. Adults stood together smiling. The picture carried warmth that no amount of time had erased. On the back someone had written a short sentence. A home is never measured by what it owns. It is measured by the love it protects. Your soulmate quietly repeated those words. For the first time they understood that the greatest treasure connected to the property had never been its value. It had always been the people whose lives had been shaped there. That realization changed everything. Leaving the house, they locked the door once more and placed the key safely in their pocket. Before driving away, they looked back one final time. They no longer saw a forgotten building. They saw a place where healing could begin. That afternoon they visited an elderly woman who had known the family for decades. She welcomed them warmly and invited them inside. The walls of her small home were covered with old photographs and handwritten Bible verses framed with care. After listening quietly, she smiled with gentle understanding. "I always believed this day would come," she said softly. She explained that the family had often spoken about the importance of passing down not only a house, but also kindness, honesty, and faithfulness. She remembered hearing that one day someone would return, not searching for property, but searching for peace. Those words settled deeply within your soulmate's heart. Before leaving, the woman handed them a small envelope she had promised to protect until the right time arrived. Inside was a simple note. "When your heart is ready, stop looking backward. Build forward." No complicated instructions. No hidden clues. Just wisdom. Driving home, your soulmate realized they already knew what had to happen next. Every document had been found. Every mystery surrounding the address had been answered. The only unfinished part was the conversation they had delayed for far too long. They reached for their phone. This time they did not put it back down. They began writing a message to you. The first version felt too formal. The second felt incomplete. The third sounded like someone still hiding behind fear. They erased every word. Then they simply began telling the truth. They admitted they had been afraid. They admitted they should have trusted you sooner. They admitted the property had become a symbol of everything they had struggled to express. Most importantly, they admitted that throughout every discovery, every letter, every photograph, and every visit to that quiet address, one person had remained in their thoughts. You. When they finally finished the message, they read it once more. It contained no dramatic promises. No impossible claims. Only honesty, gratitude, and hope. Their thumb rested above the send button. For several quiet seconds they simply breathed. Outside the window, the evening sky turned golden as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the fields. Inside the room, the fear that had once controlled every decision finally released its grip. Your soulmate smiled gently. Then they pressed send. A few moments later the phone screen lit up. A reply had arrived much sooner than expected. They looked at the screen, took one slow breath, and quietly whispered, "Maybe this is where everything truly begins." Before opening your response, they noticed one final detail tucked inside the old envelope they had nearly thrown away days earlier. It was a folded piece of paper with a hand-drawn plan for restoring the house, and written across the top were words that would give completely new meaning to that address and reveal why your name had always belonged in its future. Listen closely. Your reply remained on the screen for several quiet seconds before your soulmate gathered the courage to read it. Their hands were steady this time. Their heart still raced, but not with fear. It raced with hope. The first words were simple, honest, and warm. You thanked them for finally telling the truth. There was no anger waiting for them. No harsh judgment. Only kindness that had been patiently preserved through time. In that moment they understood something they had missed for years. Honest words spoken late are still better than silence that lasts forever. They read your message again. Then once more. Each sentence lifted a burden they had carried for far too long. You never mentioned the value of the property. You never asked about documents or legal papers. Instead, you asked how they had been carrying so much alone. That single question reached deeper than anything else. It reminded them that genuine love is not built upon possessions. It is built upon compassion, patience, and the willingness to listen. The following weekend they returned to the property one more time. This visit felt completely different. The heavy feeling that once surrounded the house had disappeared. Morning sunlight filled the front yard. Wildflowers had begun growing beside the old wooden fence. Even the quiet wind moving through the trees seemed to welcome a new beginning. Standing near the porch, your soulmate unfolded the hand-drawn restoration plan they had discovered inside the forgotten envelope. It showed more than repairs. Small notes had been written beside different rooms. The kitchen carried one sentence. May every meal shared here strengthen grateful hearts. The living room held another. May every conversation choose truth over fear. Near the front porch someone had carefully written. May every guest leave with greater hope than when they arrived. Your soulmate smiled. Those words transformed the entire meaning of the property. It was never meant to become a monument to the past. It was meant to become a place where new memories could grow. They stepped inside again and slowly walked through each room. This time they imagined fresh paint covering the faded walls. They imagined warm lights glowing through the windows during peaceful evenings. They imagined laughter replacing silence. Every picture in their mind included people gathered together instead of empty spaces. Most of all, they imagined welcoming you through the front door. That thought no longer felt impossible. It felt natural. Later that afternoon they met with a local builder to understand what restoring the home would require. The builder listened carefully before walking around the property. After examining every room, he smiled. The foundation is stronger than it looks, he said. It has been waiting for someone willing to care for it. Those words stayed with your soulmate long after the meeting ended. The house. Their heart. Even your connection. All three had something in common. The foundation had survived. Driving away, they realized that restoration always begins beneath the surface. Beautiful results appear later, but quiet rebuilding starts where very few people ever look. That truth gave them confidence. They no longer felt trapped by old regrets. They finally believed that broken seasons could lead to beautiful ones. Over the next several days, small changes slowly began. The yard was cleaned. Broken branches were removed. Dust disappeared from every room. Fresh air filled the house as every window was opened. With each simple task, the property became brighter. It almost seemed grateful to be cared for again. One evening, your soulmate paused beside the front porch just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky filled with gentle shades of gold and orange. They reached into their pocket and looked once more at the old photograph that had started everything. Then they held it beside the house. The differences were easy to see. Time had changed many details. Yet the heart of the place remained exactly the same. They carefully placed the photograph back inside its envelope. It had fulfilled its purpose. Its job was never to keep them looking backward. It was meant to guide them forward. That same evening your phone rang. This time there was no hesitation. The conversation began quietly. There were moments of silence. There were tears. There were smiles that neither of you could hide. No perfect speeches were needed. No dramatic promises filled the conversation. Honest words became enough. You spoke about forgiveness. Your soulmate spoke about growth. Both of you agreed that trust is rebuilt one choice at a time. Before ending the call, your soulmate made one simple invitation. When the house is ready, I would love for you to see it. You gently accepted. Days later, the front gate opened once again. You walked slowly along the same path that appeared in the faded photograph. The flowers beside the walkway had already begun blooming. Fresh paint brightened the front porch. Sunlight reflected from newly cleaned windows. The house still carried its history, but it no longer carried its sadness. Your soulmate met you at the door with quiet gratitude. Neither of you rushed the moment. You simply stood together, looking at the place that had once been hidden behind silence. Now it stood in the open. Room by room they showed you everything they had discovered. The letters. The photographs. The old key. The restoration plan. Every hidden piece had finally found its place. Nothing remained concealed. As you reached the living room, your eyes rested on the fireplace. Above it hung the restored family photograph in a simple wooden frame. Beside it was another empty frame. You looked at your soulmate with curiosity. They smiled. That frame is for the memories we have not created yet. For a moment neither of you spoke. The quiet said enough. The secret property had never been the ending. It became the beginning. Its true value was never measured by land, walls, or paperwork. Its greatest gift was the courage it awakened, the truth it uncovered, and the hope it restored between two hearts willing to choose honesty over fear. As evening settled around the peaceful home, warm light shone through every window. The once forgotten address no longer represented mystery. It represented renewal. And anyone passing by would simply see an old house lovingly restored. Only you and your soulmate would know that the greatest restoration had never happened inside the walls. It had happened inside your hearts. As this message comes to a close, remember what truly changed. It was never just an old property. It was never only an address on a piece of paper. It was the courage to face the truth, the willingness to let go of fear, and the choice to believe that healing is possible after seasons of silence. The house became a symbol of hope because two hearts finally stopped hiding. Every letter, every photograph, every quiet moment, and every difficult decision led to this new beginning. Sometimes life does not change in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it changes through small acts of honesty that slowly rebuild trust, one day at a time. If this message encouraged your heart today, do not keep that hope to yourself. Share it with someone who may need a reminder that broken seasons do not last forever. Someone you know may be carrying silent pain, waiting for a reason to believe that brighter days are still ahead. A simple share could be the encouragement they have been praying for. And if this message spoke to your heart, take a quiet moment today to pray. Ask God for wisdom, patience, and the strength to choose truth over fear. Ask Him to help you forgive where forgiveness is needed, to heal where healing is needed, and to guide your steps with peace instead of worry. Even when you cannot see the full picture, remember that faith often grows strongest during the waiting. Thank you for spending these moments with us and allowing this fictional message of hope to become part of your day. Your time is valuable, and we are grateful you stayed until the very end. More uplifting and inspiring messages are on the way, each created to encourage your heart, strengthen your faith, and remind you that hope is always worth holding on to. If you enjoyed this message, please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing so you never miss another uplifting message. Your support helps us continue creating encouraging content for people all around the world who need hope, comfort, and inspiration. Finally, if this message touched your heart in a special way, type Amen in the comments. It is a simple expression of gratitude and faith. May you move forward with peace, courage, and hope, trusting that every new day brings another opportunity to grow, to forgive, and to embrace the beautiful future that still lies ahead. Thank you for watching, and may God's peace be with you always.